Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Fired Up with CJ show. Today we have Renee Linnell talking about her book. It's a personal memoir with her experience living in, I guess, a cult. Is that how you describe it?
Yes,
And her book
definitely a
called
cult.
The Burn Zone. So, welcome. I found this book a total page turner. It was a fast read and a very, very interesting read. So, welcome.
Thank you.
So there's so many. I was just thinking, there's so many people seeking peace and enlightenment that I think than there probably has ever been in a time. And they're gurus that are coming from all sorts of different places to America. And I know of a lot of Indian gurus who come, and they have practices that are based on this kind of guru practice where I talked to someone who is part of an Indian practice, and they call their person a master, which really shocked me. It's like, why would you call them a master? Does that mean you're a servant? And I said, no, it's, it's a term of reference. And I was like, wow, I really don't like that English translation. So there's a lot of these practices that seem so foreign um, and I think could almost be seen as a cult. Some of them probably are, some of them aren't. Some of them have been like I have family members that actually have been part of a cult. And so I've seen all sorts of different things in this one, in the spiritual realm, and how people lose themselves in the interest in pursuing enlightenment. So the question for you starts off with just how do you even know that your practice is a cult?
I, that's a hard question to answer. But I think the number one thing that comes to mind is when you no longer feel good anymore, where you start to feel confused, where you start to trust your own intuition and your own inner knowing, and you feel like maybe you're being pushed past your boundaries. Most of us go into any relationship because it feels good in the
Mm-hmm.
beginning
Mm-hmm.
and we're getting something positive out of it. And then it can turn. And when it turns, it's time for us to love ourselves enough to know it's time to part ways, whether it's with a romantic partner or a job or a friendship or a spiritual teacher.
Right. So when did it start not feeling good for you, and when were your boundaries? Like when were you finally like, okay, this is not feeling good for me. My boundaries have been crossed, and I had to part ways.
There were a lot of red flags along the way. The biggest one was when I had been in the group less than a year, and they started talking about a power trip to Egypt, and that the senior students were promised that they would have a chance to reach enlightenment on this power trip, and that some of the junior students, and I was a junior student,
Okay.
we were invited to come along. And so I thought, oh my gosh, if there's any chance that I could reach enlightenment, not really even totally understanding what enlightenment was, I want to go. And so we had this group phone call, and they said that we would pay the cost of the trip, and then we would pay an additional $10,000 as an empowerment fee. And so for that, for me, was a huge red flag. And yet, I had lived life my way for 33 years. And even though I had this dream life from the outside looking in as a surf model and professional tango dancer traveling the world, I was so empty inside and so sad. And so even though the red flag came up, they're using us, I
Mm,
thought, I have to try something different. I can't go back to life the way I've been living it.
mm,
I'm 33 years old. I'm ready to do something drastic.
right. So it was an empowerment fee, and how did they explain this empowerment fee?
They said that everything is energy. Even the scientists will tell you so, and that money is energy, and that the more energy that we paid, the more energy we would get back in return as an empowerment from the teachers.
Oh, I see. So it's kind of like the more money you pay, the more energy you get. Okay, so that was basically the idea. I'm gonna go. I'm hoping to seek enlightenment, and I'm paying $10,000. So I'm expecting actually a lot of energy because that's a lot of money. Wow, that's interesting. And when you went on that trip, something did happen, right?
It did. It was an incredibly powerful trip for me. And when I touched the step pyramid, I dissolved into white light. And I felt myself being drawn to this beautiful orb of pulsating love and light. And I felt timeless. And I felt like I was being drawn back to the source of what we came from. And I could hear somebody saying, Renee, Renee, way in the distance. And I knew that that was a name that I had been called, one of my many names. But it seemed so far away. And then somebody again touched me and said, Renee, you need to take your hand off the pyramid. A guard was saying you can't touch the pyramid, because I guess there had been a big group wearing white meditating around the pyramids. And so the guards were hypersensitive to that. But so that experience was incredibly profound.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's a really tricky scenario, right? Because
Right.
you were feeling the real deal. I mean, I don't know. When you look back, love, light, timelessness, the source, that seems like the real deal. Is that what it felt? I mean, even now looking back, is that what that moment felt like?
Yes, and it's the same exact experience I felt the first time I meditated in front of this female teacher, this complete dissolution into white light. And I realize now it's called samadhi. There's a name for it. And it's the highest state of meditation there is, that people try for lifetimes to reach. And I don't know how, but I reached it the first time in front of my teacher, and then again when I touched this pyramid. And so I thought, I will do anything it takes to access this state of mind. Imagine the freedom that comes with that.
Okay. And so in that moment, so I mean, I think just because that was the empowerment fee was like, huh? But then you
Yeah.
had this incredible experience which made you think, okay, I'm going to continue, or what made you take that initial kind of like question mark, red flag, and go to, okay.
I kept having these microseconds of that white light when I would meditate. And then along with it, we were being taught to use our career as our spiritual practice. So she was coaching us in our careers, and she was giving us these incredible tasks, like go get a black belt in karate, which was amazing because I started getting stronger. My body was stronger. My spirit was stronger. I never thought I could do push-ups on my knuckles on a wood floor,
Wow.
or break a board with my fist, or endure really long karate classes with military men. And so I saw myself getting stronger in these ways. And then she wanted me to become a computer programmer to sharpen my mind. And as a professional dancer, I never thought that I could have a career programming, and yet I loved it. And so in the beginning, there was this really intense romance phase of building me up. And then once I was really committed and spending most of my time with the group and eventually running her company, and once the groupthink had kicked in and I was spending all my time with like-minded people, she started introducing self-doubt and saying that in order to become enlightened, I had to sand away my ego and I had to change in all these different ways.
Okay. And so, I mean, it's a mixed bag, right? Because she suggested the advice that she gave was actually help you go out and pursue things that you never would have maybe experienced or even thought that you could be tango dancer, computer programmer, or,
Right.
go to NYU business school, like all these things that pushed you out of what you thought your life could be possible, what would be possible for your life. So I can see how it'd be confusing to know,
Right.
like, it's kind of a mixed bag. So, that was the first warning sign, which is like, what's this empowerment fee? This doesn't sound
Right.
great. And then what were the other kind of warning signs that you got?
Warning signs. Well, then as I started to work closer and closer with her and her number one male student, who also ran the company, he started coming on to me. So that was another warning sign.
Right.
And yet when he did that, by then my whole life was everything with them. And he was 12 years older than I was. And my father had been 15 years older than my mother. And so as he started coming on to me, again, the intuition said, I think this man, first I thought he was fathering me, which I was
Right.
desperate for because I lost my father when I was 15. And then I realized he wasn't fathering me. He was coming on to me romantically. And again, my intuition said, I'm not quite sure. And yet I wanted so badly to be close to the female teacher. I wanted so badly to become enlightened. I wanted so badly to change into a different version of myself that I allowed myself to be seduced and become a romantic partner of the male teacher.
Right. And you said that you were a consort, which I don't really know. Is that like, is consort kind of a formal position or a
It
title?
is. It's when
Okay.
a spiritual teacher takes a student as a lover.
Okay.
But, and then yet, I was reading all these books about these old saints and mystics, and you even see in the Tibetan Tankas, and it says like Shiva with consort, or and it shows the woman wrapped around the man. And yet, what they don't tell you when you read the deeper text is that they're equals, that they're both masters, they're both teachers, and they're coming together in a divine union.
Mm,
But spiritual teachers, it's in their best interest, these narcissists, to convince the student that he or she will gain more power and more enlightenment by becoming the lover.
mm. Okay. So, okay. So the other question I have, uh, I find it interesting that you had said at one point in the book that Vishnu, who is the male kind of secondhand person to Lakshmi, who is the leader of this charismatic female leader of this group, that you saw them as a mother and father, and that you even said several times like it felt like it was kind of an extended family, and you're seeking, and I assume that's why in the very beginning of the book you talk about your family history. So not having a father, having a mother who's intermittently loving, not loving, and having a brother a twin brother, right? That you have kind of
Yes.
a, I don't know, not necessarily the type of relationship that you wanted. So you have this kind of family dynamic that preceded going into this guru practice. And and how do you think that kind of set you up to then enter into this practice, like looking for a mother and father, and how do you think that set you up in any way, or did it?
I think it made me incredibly vulnerable. And I think a lot of those of us that do get sucked into these types of groups, it's because we're searching for a tribe of similar people.
Mm,
And I think that, I found in my healing, I one day realized each one of us is completely unique in a world of 8 billion people, which is amazing. And then we hide what makes us different in order to fit in. And in order to be accepted, we try to blend in, and we make the things that are different about us smaller and smaller.
mm,
We want so badly to be loved that we let the adults in our lives tell us who to be and how to be. We're
mm-hmm,
taught from a very young age not to have boundaries, because when we try to enforce boundaries and say no, we get told, nice little girls and boys don't do that.
mm,
And so then as adults, we're really desperate for a place where we belong, because we don't know who we
mm,
are and we don't know how to be who we are. And
mm-hmm.
so when we walk into another group of weirdos that are like us,
Right.
we go, I found my home. And
Um,
especially those of us that are seeking, I think we don't buy the paradigm of the world that we're taught in school and in church, that
mm-hmm,
we're sinners and that life is supposed to be hard. And so we're desperate to find another paradigm where there's joy and there's light and there's magic and miracles. And when we find that, we stick around.
yeah.
And our minds are very malleable, and we're very open to a different paradigm. So somebody can really insert whichever one he or she is teaching.
Yeah, it's really, from the hypnotherapist standpoint, your mind is in a certain stage that is very suggestible to brainwash, right? I mean, if your
Yeah.
brain is in a meditative state, it goes directly into your unconscious, and it's like forming beliefs about what is true or not. So, a teacher, a parent, they all have this incredible power to like subject these messages to you like a parent would. And it's interesting because I'm in a spiritual practice where there's a guru, and sometimes he gets annoyed because he's like, I'm not your daddy, I'm not your mommy. I'm like, I'm not any of these things. But I think people go into these practices wanting to, like you said, find a family, heal wounds that they have with their mother and father. But I think that kind of sets us up to be super vulnerable, I think.
It does.
Yeah, I mean, what advice would you have for folks that, see their teacher as a parental figure or see their sangha as a family? How do you know, like, when your family member has crossed the line and you should leave.
Again, we have to go back to our own inner guidance. We're all born with this incredibly powerful emotional guidance system, which is when we're around people that are good for us, we feel wonderful, we feel uplifted, we feel filled with joy, we feel energized, we feel superhuman. Like the right people in our lives make us feel beautiful and wanted and worthy. And the wrong people in our lives, even if it's just meeting somebody for a second, we get an immediate reaction, which is in our gut. And it's this feeling like, yuck, I don't like the way I feel, or suddenly I'm worried about how I look, or suddenly I'm worried about what I say, or suddenly I'm insecure, or I'm just not feeling that great. And you leave feeling drained. And so I think that we really have to listen to that guidance. And in any group that we're in, there were people that were in my group that my friend Bruno, who's in the book, and I kept his name the same, he just loved the way he felt when he meditated. He got put on the security team and he got to hit on all the women. He loved it. It was fun for him.
Right.
And yet he didn't do the homework. He didn't read the books. He didn't watch the movies. He didn't burn everything he owned. He didn't change his life. And he got out unscathed. And then there's me, who's an extreme person and did everything they said and ended up so damaged I was suicidal and had no idea who I was.
Right.
Burned everything I owned, distanced myself from everyone I loved. So my advice is, when you start to not feel good in any situation, even if it's a yoga class and the teacher is telling you to do a pose you don't want to do, you walk out.
So here's the, and I'm sure you've felt this or heard this yourself. So it's like, if you don't feel good, well, then that teacher is there to teach you something. It's your ego, which is why you're not feeling good. And you mentioned this several different times. That, in fact, there's a quote that I found interesting. It says, "Intuition is really occult, trying to knock you off your path." I mean, so there are all these messages about your intuition. And then in spiritual practices, you have a lot of you need to surrender. This is your ego making a big mess out of things and creating drama, stories, and all these different things. So how, when you look back, so I'm hearing your advice, which is just know, you'll know, because you'll know how you're feeling. But when you have these intuitive moments, how do you know that it's not your ego? It's not that you're surrendering. It's not something else.
Well, and that's the hook, right? That's how they get you to stay. I was taught that my ego would want me to quit the path, or my ego would make me not want to change, or that the occult forces would I'd becoming so bright that these dark occult forces would try to get me to leave. And so what I realized, and that's the quote you read, that anytime my intuition told me something wasn't right, they would say that's the occult dark forces messing with your mind. And now what I think is that we are these beautiful, bright light, white, divine beings in human bodies. And we're having a human experience. And the human experience is incredibly messy, and it's supposed to be messy, and it's the land of opposites. So when we feel love, we feel hate. When we feel joy, we feel despair. And the ego is a necessary part of this human journey to keep us in our bodies and to keep us human and to keep us with our personalities. And so all of this teaching out there to get rid of our ego, I just am not quite sure that's very healthy. Right. I think those of us drawn to spiritual teachers are drawn because we want to be the best versions of ourselves possible, which means that even the broken, messed up version is pretty darn good. The intention's really pure. So I'm not quite sure we're the ones that need to try to shatter our egos to become better. I think we're the ones that need to listen to our inner guidance and be who we truly are.
Right. So so you're questioning this whole idea of surrender. It's like I always think of it as well, what if I'm meant to do this? Why am I even given any of these things? Why am I given an ego and a mind that is a strong mind? And why am I, if all these things are supposed to be thrown away, or ignored, or considered evil or bad? Why would God even, bother designing me this way? That's almost where I go.
Exactly. I mean, I think it's the narcissists that need to get rid of their ego, right? It's that posturing and that using other people to gain advantage. Those are the people that need to get rid of their egos, but they're not the ones signing up for spiritual teachers.
That's actually a good point.
So,
That's
that
really an
teaching needs
interesting point. I never
that
thought of that.
teaching needs to go to them, and they're not listening.
Right.
So I think it's up to us that are trying to become better versions of ourselves to check in and go, what I learned after all of this is, after trying to erase myself completely and after living a life of trying to be something I'm not, is that me just being me is quite easy, and it's actually quite fun. And when I do the quirky, weird things that bring me joy, and I get to dress how I want to dress and speak how I want to speak and do what I want to do, I'm happy in this world. And when I'm happy, I'm kind. And when I'm kind, then I'm spreading light. And when I'm kind, I'm understanding. When I'm kind, I'm compassionate. And so for those of us that are seeking and searching, what I learned is, if we could learn to trust ourselves and just be ourselves, we would spread so much light in this world. We'd be enlightened.
What do you even, how do you even define enlightenment now? I know you had it. So how did you define it, and how do you define it now? And are you even still seeking it?
I thought enlightenment was not living in human states of mind any longer. That
Okay.
I had heard about these Buddhas called Mahasiddhas, and that it meant immutable mind, and that they could go in any situation and their mind would be filled with this crystalline peace. That's what I thought enlightenment was. I thought I could be being burned at the stake and still be in peace inside my mind. And then I thought I would meditate myself through some portal and achieve this state of mind. On the other side of it, I think that enlightenment is being the truest, most authentic, kindest, most compassionate version of ourselves, which starts with being that to ourselves, which means that we understand we get grumpy and we get bitchy and we get mean and we get irritable, we get judgmental, we get self-righteous. It's part of the human experience, and it's okay. But we try not to go out in the world and spew that all over everybody else.
Right.
So I think that we're our happiest version when we're loving and when we're kind. And
Right.
so I also think enlightenment is accepting the world as it is. They say the Buddha was enlightened because he accepted the world as it is. And so instead of spending all our energy trying to change others so that we can feel better, we spend that energy just trying to find satisfaction in the moment, because there's always something beautiful, always. And so for me, turning my mind to find what satisfies me in the moment. I'm on a plane on the runway for 3 hours, but yet the cabin is climate controlled and the chair is quite comfortable, and there's a bathroom if I need to use it, and they're serving water.
Right.
So for me, always going back to that, and then always like leaving a larger tip to tell a stranger I love them and brighten their day, or leaving 15 minutes earlier so I'm not a jerk in traffic. That makes me a better person and brings me incredible joy. And so that's what I think enlightenment is now. Yeah. And then understanding that I'll never know. I don't have all the answers. I will never know.
Well, there's scriptures that tell you, and then, it's funny, my teacher says it's just about joy and freedom. It's joy and freedom. If you are living a life where there's joy, freedom, or presence, then that's it. You've arrived. And then you don't have, I don't know. I'm not sure if you even have to. I have a nanny who used to work with my children, and she was already there, and she didn't do any spiritual practice. Her husband worked at Boeing. He was a machinist. She was a school teacher. She was retired. They'd have like a Guinness at the end of the day, and she was like in deep samadhi, like honest and truly, like she didn't do anything, but she was actually pretty content as a human being without any of the trappings, without doing, she went to church every week, but it wasn't like this big production, I think.
And that just gave me goosebumps, because those are the Buddhas walking among us, the people that are just deeply content in any life, whatever they're doing. And dogs and cats, you watch them, they are deeply content.
That's true.
And they walk into a room and they change the vibration. Just a cat sleeping in a room changes the vibration.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I think that we feel like we have to be in these white robes, chanting Om with a daisy behind our ear to be spiritual. And like you said, somebody working at Boeing, or somebody, serving coffee, or somebody hauling trash, who's deeply content and so grateful and satisfied just for another day in a human body, that's a Buddha.
No, I even think a dog, because I actually, my husband and I were just walking beforehand, and we saw this dog, and his eyes were just pools of brown, like chocolate pools of brown happiness. He was just like, his tails, it was like a puppy, and I was like, oh my God, I feel like that dog is giving us an energy transmission of love. Like he was just beaming love through his little cute little eyes. I think
They
even dogs
are.
are enlightened.
They are. They're portals. They're portals of light.
Yeah, they definitely are. Okay, I have a bunch of questions. Okay, so when other people left, I mean, what were the limits that other people? So for you, it got to a point where it just didn't feel right anymore. There's lots of different warning signals or yellow or red flags throughout that. And you said a lot of other of people left the same sangha. Why did they leave? I mean, what were their reasons?
Well, first of all, I got thrown out.
Okay.
So that's how I got out. I
Okay.
got given I got given an impossible task, and that was her way of throwing me out. But that's a big spoiler, so I don't want to give that part away.
Right.
It's a big part of the book. People that were leaving, and this is another sign of a cult, when you get shamed for leaving, or when you get shamed for having different ideas, when you get shamed for speaking up, and when you get ostracized if you leave. So people were leaving as the tuition was raising. People were leaving when the tasks became more numerous. And then those of us that stayed just thought, oh, they're not committed, or they don't care about enlightenment, or they're not strong enough. Uh,
Yeah, that's very hard. And you talk about in the book where people are kind of you're going and joining a practice that you hadn't done for a while, living on the West Coast, East Coast, and so your teacher comes along and you walk in and people are kind of giving you this like hi, like you are a shamed individual. So do you have a sense of what people say? Like what were they saying about you, or like in what ways are you being shamed if you
well,
leave the cult?
once I got sent away, apparently the female teacher told everyone I was the devil and a witch and a sorceress, and that I was energetically manipulating all of them. And she even did that while I was in the group. So the female students that were my friends, even longtime friends that I had had before the group, started to believe, and still do, that I am energetically, and that I was energetically manipulating their minds.
Wow.
Um, Making them lose jobs, making them lose boyfriends, making them gain
Oh, wow.
weight.
Right, yeah.
And I unfortunately was so brainwashed that I thought maybe I am doing these things, but I don't know when I'd be
Oh.
doing them, so I must be doing them when I'm sleeping.
Oh
So then I didn't want
no.
to sleep. I mean,
Oh
it's
my
crazy.
God. Oh
On
my
the other side,
God.
looking back, it's all crazy.
What was this? I'm just so confused. I'm like this whole dark occult, it's like there's this dark occult thing. So if any time you're going off the path or having an intuition or having even trouble, it's like all attributed to the occult. So what was the
Well, and
occult and what were the
what's
messages?
what's fascinating is when you think of Satan in the
Hmm.
church.
Hmm.
I mean, I had this one interview and he said, "How on earth could you let people convince you of these crazy concepts?" And I just thought, there are billions of people out there that believe in Satan, that believe you can't have sex or you'll go to hell. This most beautiful, intimate thing that you can do with your body, with someone you love, that's bad. All these things, that if you love the same gender, that you're going to go to hell. I mean, so billions of people believe that.
Right.
And what we were taught to believe was that because we were becoming so bright, these dark forces would mess with our minds. And
Oh,
at
so
the
like if you
time,
had ego or mind, it was like a dark force.
it was a dark
I
force.
see. Okay.
And I resisted that. That was another red flag. I hated that idea, but yet I have always believed in angels guiding us, or those that have transitioned to non physical still with us and still guiding us. I believed in the thousand visible hands that are always helping us. And so I thought, well, if I believe in these beings of light that are always there to guide us and hold us and love us and help us, I guess it's not that far a stretch to believe in the opposite, that there are dark forces and dark beings messing with us.
Right. Well, I mean, there's actually lots of spiritual practices like shamans actually that I've talked to. They have whole practices devoted towards extracting negative energy or like darts or dark energy thrown upon a person. I mean, it's this idea that there is dark energy out there. It can stick to you. It's like getting a virus or lice, or like you don't know when it's going to hit you, and once it's there, it's like all over you, like that kind of thing. I mean, there is a lot of other spiritual practices, Buddhist, Taoist. I mean, they all kind of have. I don't know if Taoist, but Buddhist shamans, Chantra, like all these practices have this idea of dark energy. And so I think it's hard to know, it's hard to, so it's not just maybe and the Christian practices have these ideas of dark energy. So I really don't know why that guy was saying, how could you believe in these things? I mean,
Right.
yeah, so I'm not sure. I mean, my teacher has never talked about the cult and dark energy, but that would actually, if someone with that positional power started inserting those things into my head, it would be like, wow, I mean, I'm trusting you, so I assume, and you've traveled down this path, so I assume that this is true. I mean, it would be very hard. I mean, to just give yourself a break, like for that, I mean,
Thank you.
it's like, of course, like, I think that, I mean, I get it, and I think that it's not a crazy thing to think. So, but now what do you think of, like, when you think of the dark energy, the occult, and people saying, oh, you're the devil, the witch, a sorcerer, like, whatever. Like, what, I mean, how do you react to those statements, those judgments, and those beliefs that are, I don't know, that have some basis in religious studies, but are, like, I'm not sure if they're true or not. What do you believe now?
I believe, one, that our creator, whoever made us, protected us. And that if we came into this realm in human bodies, that we're protected. That we have to be. That we don't have to walk around protecting ourselves with white light and worried. I just don't want to. I want to believe I'm strong enough and that I'm protected with this intuition that tells me I don't feel good when I talk to this person, I'm going to walk away. I start to turn down this street, I don't like the way it feels, I'm going to turn around and walk down a different street. Or even I'm getting in my car to leave and suddenly I get a really strong desire not to go, I'm going to honor that. And so I believe that we're incredibly protected. And I also think our minds are so strong that if we start living in creating a paradigm that there are dark forces and we have to be nervous all the time and we never know when someone's going to throw a spell on us, that then we can create a reality where that's true. And so I believe the law of attraction stuff, that the brighter and higher our vibration is, the more light and bright vibration we attract. And I've seen it happen for me. When I'm in a bad state of mind, I have one of those days where I'm just out of alignment and I spill my coffee and nothing works out. And then days where I'm completely in alignment and it's like I'm just being smiled upon.
Right. So it's more about the internal reality that you're creating for yourself and what
Yes.
you choose to believe. If you choose to believe that there's an occult and people throwing spells on you, you're going to create that you're going to create that reality. Honestly, I believe that as well. I actually had a period, I think for a month or two, where I had someone who I found out later was doing these like demonic rituals. I don't know. Anyways, this person I found out later was doing this. I was like subject number one, where he gave me a very inappropriate massage. It was sexual in nature. That surprised
Oh,
me. And so, and then like, took some of my energy, did who knows what, and then kept on doing this to other women going forward. It was just this unending thing. And I was like feeling like I just want to extract all of his energy out of my field. And the more I focused on that negative energy and the fear and like, oh my God, did I get all the energy? What made me susceptible in the first place? Like saging my house every 2 seconds, like the worse it became. Like honestly, at one point someone said, you just have to drop whatever you're doing. Whatever you're doing is probably more attracting all these energies than just dropping this whole thing. And once we dropped it, guess what? Everything went away. So, but I do think there's something out there. I don't know exactly what's out there, but if you focus on that, you could spend your whole life focusing on that. And I think
yeah.
I think you're the conclusion that you came to was exactly the same one that I came to, which is if you have a sense of presence and connectedness to the source in the first place, then the source will guide you out of danger. And so
Yeah.
you just don't have to worry about it. The more you're in fear, the more you're disconnected from a higher guidance, and the more likely that if you do fear this thing, something could come along because you just lost the signal. You lost the
Right.
internet connection. So I'm there, right? I'm right there with you on that. So do you still think of Vishnu and Lakshmi they're? How do you explain things like you saw them, they had white light around them in their being, and they had times in which they were giving you or connecting with you, and you felt that white light. So were they enlightened? Did they have how do you explain this dichotomy of this extreme, bizarre behavior, but then at the same time this incredible light?
I don't think I'll ever be able to explain that. I don't know. I have no idea. I just know that I've heard a lot in different songs since I paid attention to it. This not everything that glitters is gold. And again, I think a lot of these narcissists and sociopaths, they're very sparkly, they're very charismatic, and so it's a mind. It screws with our mind, and yet our gut says, I don't like the way I feel. And so, and then we'll go into self-doubt where we go, but this person's so nice and this person's so kind and this person loves me so much. And yet I don't want to see her or him. I don't want to call him. I don't want to call her. I don't want to go have coffee. And so I don't understand it. I don't understand where that light comes from. But I do know that when we really tune in, we don't feel very good around it. But again, I thought it was my ego, and I thought that it was the occult every time I had that.
So I talked to, I have a group that I hang out with here in Seattle, and someone said, listen, every single one of these spiritual leaders is flawed. I mean, because they're human. And until they're divine and they've passed and they go to a different realm, every single one of them is going to be flawed. And it was very much like your friend Bruno. It's like, get what you need to get out of there, and don't worry about it. Don't get sucked into all this other stuff. Just get the energy if that's what you need, and then get out. It's like a very transactional thing. Fill your gas tank, then leave. And I don't know if Bruno had the similar kind of attitude, but it sounded like this kind of, they have something, they have their ability to channel white light. They have some ability to do that. And when it comes through the pipe, it's clean, but you have to kind of almost energetically just focus less on the person, the delivery system. It's like, don't focus on the gas pump and the gas coming out of it. Just think about the gas, this is the energy that I need. Take it and recognize that everyone else is somewhat, any person in human form that its delivery mechanism is going to be flawed. And so pick the one that has the flaws that you can deal with, get what you need, and just forget about the rest. Which, I don't know. I don't know what you think about that.
I agree. And in fact, that koan, look at the moon, don't look at the finger pointing to the moon. I don't know if you've ever heard that, but I always wondered what that meant. And then right as you were talking, I just got it, which is the teachings coming through a person, the white light coming through a person, the moon is beautiful and pure, but the person or the finger pointing to the moon is human and flawed. Yeah. And every human, I believe, is flawed, and that's the reason, and that it makes us need each other.
Right.
And it makes us understand each other. And so I agree that it's beautiful to have guides and teachers, and it's beautiful to take away from people things that can make us better and happier and more joyful. But once we deify another human, I think we're in trouble.
Yeah, I think it's, a girlfriend in the practice said, here's how I deal with it. Just take what you want to believe in and then throw the rest away.
Yes, and that's such a healthy way to do it.
She's like, she's a psychotherapist. She's like, if stuff sounds like caca, just throw it out. Just take the stuff. If you want I need the energy is helping me. Some of the advice is good. Some of it's crap. So I take what I need and just forget about the rest, because this person is inherently flawed because they're human. If you're talking to a deity, maybe, yeah, but you're not talking to a deity. Even if you think you're talking to a deity, it's like coming through your flawed human mind. So even that
It's right.
is
It's coming through a filter. It's coming
subject
through a
to,
filter.
exactly. Anytime I think you have some filter, it's like just find the filter that says like it's pretty clean. And I don't know. That's where how I've come to understand this. But I'm still sorting. Unlike you, I'm still sorting these things out. Like I definitely had a mommy daddy issue as well, where I lost my dad and I was looking for a
Oh,
father figure. And here comes someone who's this loving, gentle person. And I literally was doing, I was doing the, uh, in, in Hawaiian, they talk about aka chords and energetic chords.
oh,
And so I did that. And I was visualizing my teacher and I saw all these chords connected in ways that I'm like, how the hell did this happen? I'm sure hooked most of them. Who knows who even cares? But they were connected in this bizarre way. And in between my teacher and me was like my father. I'm like, what? Like I had like superimposed him with the teacher. Like they really were like enmeshed together. So that my energy was all like it was so confused because it was not connected to the white light. It was connected to a person who I believed was like acting as a surrogate father, and that whole thing polluted the human being who was like funneling stuff. That's all me. Like he didn't do any of this. This was me throwing upon my own problems onto him, and then creating and missing that the white light that was coming through him, thinking that the gas pump was the deity and my dad.
yeah,
And so there were so many things that I think that can be kind of confusing about this whole. And I think I was thinking a lot about it, and I thought, what made me subjected to this? Except that, and I thought, well, you're entering a territory that you don't know. There's someone who is older and more senior and has navigated this territory before you, and
right.
has wisdom, and so, and you don't know any better. So here's someone who has supposedly become enlightened, done all these things. So just like a child, I mean, you really are in a parent-child relationship. You could become very subjected to whatever kind of messages they give you because
Yeah,
you're a kid. You really
yeah,
are like a spiritual child. But
right,
then I think the thing is that you have to recognize that you're actually God. You know what I
right,
mean? You're not a
right,
spiritual child. You're actually God, and this person's God. It's just that, whatever you come in with sets this dynamic up. I don't know, that's where
right.
I've come. But how about yourself? What did you learn in your process?
Well, similar things. And with those chords that you were talking about, what I learned, there's all this talk about giving our power away, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what exactly does that mean? And what I realized is it's when we take our heart and we hand it to someone else and we say,
Mm,
you tell me I'm lovable. You tell me I'm attractive. You tell me I'm worthy. You tell me I'm smart. And if that person doesn't, then we feel unlovable, unattractive, unworthy, not smart. And so those chords are when we expect another person to validate us. And so
mm,
we, in the way we take our power back, and you can even see you're handing your heart, you're handing your energy, you're handing your ability to feel good over to this other person. And by
mm,
taking our power back, we grab our heart, we grab that energy, we grab that power to feel good about ourselves, and we pull it back into ourselves and we say, I decide I'm worthy. I decide I'm beautiful. I decide that I'm smart. I decide
mm-hmm,
I'm good enough.
mm-hmm,
And then that energy dissipates. But for me, it took being completely shattered and broken and lost to finally understand that I had to have my own back. I had to give myself everything I was searching for from someone else. I had to buy myself the flowers and light the candles and buy the lingerie. I had to cook myself nice dinners. I had to make sure that my car was filled with gas and safe. And once I started really having my own back, I wasn't as disappointed by the world. I wasn't as
mm,
frustrated with other people. And my anxiety and fear went away because suddenly I
mm,
knew I was taking care of myself.
mm. Oh, that's beautiful. As part of this whole process myself, I realized as I was questioning this whole, like, should I stay? Should I not? What's happening? Am I going to go to the next level and commit or not? Um, What's going on?
My battery's dying, so I'm
Okay.
taking you
I was
with me
like,
on a
I'm
tour
like,
to
where
my
are you
house.
going?
I'm so sorry.
It's okay.
I forgot to
So
plug in.
it's okay. So as I was going through my own process, I realized that there was a huge attachment to the energy. It was like, oh my
Yes,
God, if I don't, and I saw that in your memoir too. If I don't do this, will I get the energy still? It's like,
right.
oh, if I lose the energy, then I'll lose my spiritual practice. I'll lose all the all the progress that I've made. And then I thought that's just totally crazy. But I had like built up this thing in my head that all of these things were true, even though they weren't. But I saw that happening to you as well. What do you think that was about, or how have you come to reconcile that? I mean, maybe you've covered it already, but when you think about the attachment to the energy and keeping, connection, it's almost like an attachment to the teacher and the energy. How do you view it now?
I think that we are all searching and seeking. And what I realize that we're all searching and seeking for is our connection to source.
Mm-hmm.
Um, which I think that when we get quiet and we go within, we can find it. I think meditation is the best way, or walking in nature, or doing anything that shuts our mind off, which is why people get addicted to sex or drugs or anything that makes the mind stop churning. But I just think and we love opening our hearts and flowing love through. And again, we get confused and we think the object to which we're flowing love is why we're feeling love. So
Mm,
we think it's the other person, it's the pet, it's the baby, it's
mm.
the teacher, it's the yoga class, where really what we're addicted to is that feeling of love, which is ours.
Right. And
It's
so now,
ours to.
so now you're sitting, not, I assume, are you ever going to do a guru practice again?
No, in
Okay.
fact, I wanted to make bumper stickers that said no more gurus.
Okay. So you've
I have an
actually,
aversion.
okay. I don't blame you based on what happened. So you had this energy, you were cut off from the energy, and now do you still feel the energy, and has your practice evolved? And how has your practice evolved? I'm assuming it has evolved and that you still feel the energy, but tell me a little bit about what that's like for you now.
Now I definitely feel the energy and I feel it more. And I feel it when I meditate and when I'm in nature and when I do the tiny things that bring me joy, like luxuriate over a cup of coffee or watch it snow or go snowboarding or surfing, um, or writing. And I can access it when I want to. For me, I there's a beautiful book called Falling Upwards by
Mm-hmm.
Richard Rohr. It was one of the books I read when I was so broken.
Mm-hmm.
And he talks about how if you're lucky, I mean, you spend the first part of your life seeking to become whoever you're supposed to be, the career and the money and the partner and the children and the house and the car and all of that. And then if you're lucky, life comes along and smashes you and you enter into the spiritual phase of your life.
Mm.
And at that stage, he says the answer to loneliness is actually solitude. And that's what I've found, that when I get off balance or overwhelmed by the world or start to feel pessimistic and depressed and sad, if I spend 24 hours in my own energy, in my own space, preferably at home, I rebalance and I feel better. So,
Mm.
so
Mm.
yes, we're addicted to that feeling of peace and love, and yet we can find it ourselves, but it's counterintuitive that we have to go within and go into quiet to find it.
And so, with these energy transmission processes, do you think that that helped you achieve the current, like they talk about stabilizing? You stabilize to a point where then you can do, as you said, like now running the energy myself and having a deeper connection to God.
I think the meditation practice definitely helped. I mean, I meditated every morning and every night, almost an hour each time without missing a day for 6 years.
Wow.
And what I learned with meditating is, with like any other skill, speaking, I learned to speak Spanish or, ride a bike or walk, or for me, dancing, that you don't learn it right away, that you stumble and stumble and stumble, but your mind is actually building structures, and eventually the structures all connect and it clicks. And that's what happened with meditating. And so now, even when I sit down, I only meditate for 15 minutes a day now. And for the first 10, my mind is so loud and I want to quit. And I'm like, I can't do this. I just can't do this. I have too much to do. It's just not working. And I've learned if I will sit for 15 minutes, the first 10, is loud noise, and then it starts to slow down. And by the end of the last 5, I've hit a place of quiet.
Beautiful. I love it. So, in a lot of ways, what I'm hearing is that, yes, that helped, but really what helped was the practice and discipline to do the meditation over and over again.
Yes.
So, there are times when in the book where, your friends, you're kind of becoming more and more distant from your friends. Do you think that was a strategy? And what role did you play? And what were your friends saying during this whole time as you were being extracted to this home?
It's definitely a strategy. And I am watching a girlfriend go through it right now as she's in a toxic relationship with a man where suddenly she's not allowed to call her friends or go out with them or text us or call us. And she can't do the things that bring her joy because all her time is with him. And so, what they're doing is removing our support structure. When we're with friends, we know who we are. When we're with friends, we feel loved even though we're flawed. When we're doing activities we love, we get empowered because activities we love bring us joy and clarity. So when anyone can remove those from our lives, they remove our support structure, and then they can introduce self-doubt and then the abuse. And we don't have the checks and balances from the outside world.
So what can friends do? Like if you had a family member or a friend that you think is getting involved in a cult, is there anything that you can do to help extract them?
I don't think you can extract them. When I was in it, I would not have left. And anyone that tried to, I just thought they don't understand. They're not spiritual. They just are too hooked into the world and not awake. And when I've been in a bad relationship with a man, I just thought, well, they don't see him the way I do. They don't see the sweet side. They don't know him the way I know him. And so my advice now is that it's good to mention concern, to say to a friend, I'm concerned. I don't like the way it's affecting you. You seem unhappy to me. And then yet say, but I trust you to walk the path you need to walk and to make your own decisions, and I will always be here for you. And then to turn your energy to yourself and make yourself the most joyful, most balanced, most aligned person you can be, so that they're looking at somebody who's joyful and aligned and thriving, offering them advice.
Right. Interesting. Okay. And what happened with your friends? Because I haven't got to that chapter yet. What happened to your friends once you left? Were they, what was the support like? And so what could a person do once you come off of one of these cults? What could they do to support and love you?
Well, when I pushed them all away, and then they couldn't find me because I changed my email and my phone number and my address. And so then I had no support. I was all alone. And then when I started healing and started writing about this and started feeling that I could share the story, I had so much shame around it, I started looking for them. And I even prayed that the people that were meant to be back in my life would show back up. And I started crossing paths with them in the weirdest places. So like airports or at a random restaurant on a random town in vacation. And they all welcomed me back with open arms. Yeah, and they all said, I love you so much. I was so worried about you. I'm just so glad you're okay.
Okay. And do you think that there's a point of no return? Like, do you still have friends that are part of that practice that have been there and haven't left? And what's happened to them?
I do. I've heard rumors that the group disappeared or dissolved. I heard rumors that they moved. I heard rumors that they're still going. But one of my good friends that joined because of me, she has shown up in this tiny town where I live and pretends like she doesn't know me and actually acts like I'm the devil. And she's telling everyone I'm the devil and a witch and a sorceress.
In the town that you live in now?
Yeah.
Oh, gosh.
And at first I cried and I was devastated. And then I thought, if anyone can understand how powerful these teachers are, it's me. And that she's believing all of this for some reason that makes her feel better about herself. But they're very damaged. And as I've been doing the book tour, people that recognize, because I changed the name of the group and the names of the people in the group, most of them, but people have been showing up on the tour that have been a part of the group that recognize it, and they're very damaged.
Yeah, and so the book is probably healing for them.
I hope so. I've been hearing that it is. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for staying later and
Thank you.
sharing us. We've
My
been
pleasure.
talking to Renee Linnell, talking about her book, The Burn Zone, a memoir, an incredible read. I couldn't put it down. It's a great book for whether you're on a spiritual practice or not. So thank you so much.
Thank you, CJ.
It means so much to me that you're listening to the show. I would love your support in any way by giving me comments below or to subscribe to the show or share the show with friends. Thank you again for your support. Love and blessings.